Thanks for watching the video. We are going to take a practice quiz together before you take Chapter 2 quiz in class. And so I thought we could do 5 problems or so to kind of get you started reviewing for this chapter quiz. So the first thing I want to do is talk about the absolute value equations that you'll solve. There are always 2 answers with absolute value. So if you go back and review your notes, find the part in your notes that talks about when you have an absolute value equal to an absolute value and find what 2 equations you'll need to set up. The first of the 2 equations is always exactly as you see it, but you drop the absolute value bars. So say 7x plus 12 is equal to x minus 8, and we'll solve that as the first case. The second case, you make a couple changes. First, you take the left side of the equation, I guess, or technically the right, doesn't really matter, but one side will stay exactly as it is, so 7x plus 12, and here's the change. The other side of the equation must be opposite of what you started with. So opposite of positive x and opposite of negative 8. So you're going to take a minus sign and distribute it to both parts on the right side of your equation. And this will be how you get your second solution. So if I solve the first one as it is, I'm going to subtract an x on both sides. I will subtract 12 on both sides. And now I'll have 6x is equal to negative 20. If I divide by 6, one of my solutions will be negative 20 divided by 6, and if we reduce that, we would get negative 10 over 3, and this can't reduce anymore, so that would be one possible solution. For the second side, I want to distribute this minus sign first, so 7x plus 12, that stays exactly as it is. Distribute the negatives, you'd have negative x and now plus 8. So if I, again, subtract 12 like I did on this side, but this time add x, I can get my solution. So I'll have 8x over here, these cancel out, and I am left with negative 4 over here, 8 minus 12. Again, divide by this coefficient in front. This time we have 8, and my second solution is negative 1/2. All right, here's problem number 2. If you want to, pause the video here, see if you can solve it on your own, and then watch the solution next. All right, another thing that we talked about in class is when you have an absolute value and an inequality sign, the very first step you have to do is get the absolute value part alone on the other side of the equation. So this minus 3 we have to deal with first before we set up our 2 cases. So I'm going to add this 3. So I will have absolute value of negative 2x minus 6 is less than or equal to 5. Now that I have my absolute value alone, I can set up my 2 cases just like we did in the first problem. You'll have 2 cases where we change the sign. We're going to do something similar here. So with an inequality, the same that we did for the first question, A, the same thing, we're going to set it up exactly as we see it, but no absolute value bars. So negative 2x minus 6 less than or equal to 5. And then for my second case, what you do is you change the inequality sign and change the sign of the number that is alone. So I will have negative 2x minus 6, that stays, but now I'm going to flip my sign the other direction. So now it will become greater than or equal to, and my 5 will also change sign. So this will be my 2 solutions. Again, go back into your Chapter 2 notes, review that we did from the book, and you'll see that there are always 2 cases with absolute value equations, whether you have an equal sign, an inequality sign, or even an absolute value equal to absolute value. All right, so let's solve. Add 6 to both sides. And now 5 plus 6, I will get negative 2x less than or equal to 11. Divide by my coefficient of negative 2. Now here's the thing you have to remember. When you divide or multiply by a negative, the value of your inequality changes sign. So it's going to flip the other direction. and this becomes a negative fraction. Technically, it doesn't matter if it's a negative numerator or denominator, it's just a negative fraction. For the right side, we'll start off with the same thing, add 6 to both sides, negative 2x greater than or equal to, in this case, 1, divide by my coefficient of negative 2. Again, if you divide or multiply by a negative number, you have to change your sign. And now I have x is less than or equal to negative a half. All right, question number 3. 7 minus 3 times the quantity of 2r minus 5 plus 5 plus 3r is equal to 6r plus 10. It doesn't list it in the directions, but I'm assuming that you're going to solve for r, so we want to say r equals a value, and what we need to do first is apply order of operations, combine like terms, and then we can solve. So the very first thing that I would do is distribute this negative 3 to both the 2r and the negative 5. So I'd have 7r minus 6r plus, because a negative times a negative, 15 plus 5 plus 3r equals 6r plus 10. And now on the right side I have an r and a number, but on the left side I have multiple r's and numbers that I should combine. So 7r minus 6r, that will be 1r. 15 and 5 will be plus 20 and plus 3r, so I'm working my way towards combining like terms. 1r plus 3 more r, that would be 4r. And now we'll solve. So I have r's on the right, r's on the left. Let's get them on the same side. I am going to subtract 4r. And then, now that I will have r's on this side, I want to get rid of the 10, so subtract 10 to both sides. So these will cancel out, and I will be left with 10. 6r minus 4r would be 2r. Those will cancel out. 10 equals 2 times the number r. If we divide by that coefficient of 2, you should get r is equal to 5. All right, question number 4. This is a typical ACT question. We've done a few of these in class. Again, I would recommend that pause the video, try it on your own, and then check to see if you did the correct work by pressing play after you've tried it. All right, so here's the question. To pass algebra, a student must have an average of at least 70 on 5 tests. On the first 4 tests, the student scored a 75, 79, 64, and 71. What possible scores on the 5th test would guarantee that the student would pass the class? Passing grade, which would be a 70 or higher. So the first thing you need to know is what an average is. And an average is when you take a sum and then you divide by the number of pieces that you have. So 70 is the average that this person is looking for, and that's the least. We want 70 or more. So I want my average of stuff to be 70 or greater than. So that's why my symbol is going to go this way. My number of tests that we're going to have is 5, and that number goes on the bottom. And now what I'm going to do is take all the 5 tests, add them up, divide by 5, and make sure that we get greater than or equal to 70. So the first 4 are 75, and a 79, and a 64, and a 71, and one unknown score for the last test, which is the one that we want to solve for. So these 5 added up, divided by 5 will get us an average, and again, we want this total to be greater than or equal to 70, which means at least 70. So get out your calculator and add those up. So we have a 75 plus 79 plus 64 plus 71. You get a total of 289. So 289 plus one more test divided by 5. We want that to be greater than or equal to 70. So to solve for x, I need to undo the division by 5. So I'm going to multiply this side by 5 and multiply this side by 5. So 70 times 5, or 7 times 5 is 35, and then add your 0. That will be less than or equal to the 289 plus that one last test. If we subtract 289, we'll get our last test. So 350 minus 289, you get a score of 61. So we need 61 points or more on that last test to pass with at least a 70. Great job. One more question left. Here's the last question. See if you can solve it on your own, and then check the video to make sure that you got the question correct. All right, distribute your 2 first. So negative 10x minus 2x. Negative 2 times 4 is minus 8. Set that less than or equal to negative 15x and plus 7. I have negative 10x minus 2 more, so that would be a total of negative 12x. The rest of it stays the same. And now what I want to do is get all my x's on one side, my numbers on the other. So I am going to add 15x so that the amount of x's I have will be positive. Negative 12 plus 15, that would be 3 x's. And I want to get rid of this 8 now so that I have my x's alone on the left side, so I'm going to add 8 and add 8. My sign remains the same, and 7 plus 15, that is going, or I'm sorry, 7 plus 8 is 15. I was thinking of the answer ahead of time. If I want to solve for x, I have 3 times x right now, so undo that multiplication by dividing by that coefficient of 3, and I will have x is less than or equal to 5. If you got 5, great job. I think you're prepared now for your Chapter 2 quiz that will be in class soon.